The second chance. The fluorescent lights of St. Margaret's hospital emergency room flickered as Sarah Chen gripped the edge of the reception desk, her knuckles white with pain. Another contraction seized her body, and she bit down hard on her lip to keep from crying out. "Please," she gasped to the nurse. "My water broke an hour ago. The contractions are 4 minutes apart." The nurse's fingers flew across the keyboard, her professional calm a stark contrast to Sarah's rising panic. "Insurance information?" Sarah's hand trembled as she pulled out a worn Medicaid card. 3 years ago, she'd had premium coverage, a corner office, and a future that gleamed like polished marble. Now she had a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, a used Toyota with a check engine light that wouldn't quit, and a baby coming 6 weeks early. "We'll get you admitted right away." "Ms. Chen," the nurse said, already signaling for a wheelchair. "Dr. Morrison is on call tonight." "You're in excellent hands." Sarah froze. The pain of the contraction faded into background. Noise as a different kind of agony flooded through her. "Did you say Morrison?" "Yes, Dr. James Morrison. He's one of our best—" "No." Sarah tried to back away, panic rising in her throat. "I need a different doctor. Anyone else, please." But another contraction hit, stronger this time, stealing her breath and her choice. The wheelchair appeared beneath her, and she was moving down the corridor before she could protest further, her vision blurring with pain and tears. She hadn't seen James in 3.5 years. Not since the night she'd stood in their Tribeca penthouse, pregnancy test in shaking hands, watching his face shift from shock to something that looked uncomfortably like horror. "Sarah, we talked about this," he'd said, his voice measured and calm in that way he had when delivering bad news. "My career is at a critical point. Chief of obstetrics at 34. Do you know how rare that is? A child now would complicate everything we've worked for." "Everything you've worked for," she'd corrected quietly. The argument that followed had been brutal in its civility. No raised voices, no thrown objects, just the surgical precision of two lawyers, which they'd both been then, dismantling a relationship with cold, hard logic. Except Sarah's logic had led her to a different conclusion. She'd chosen the baby. He'd chosen his career. Now, as the orderly wheeled her into a delivery room, Sarah spotted him through the doorway of an adjacent room, Dr. James Morrison, in navy scrubs, reviewing a chart with that same focused intensity she remembered. His dark hair was shorter now, touched with grey at the temples. He looked up as her wheelchair passed, and their eyes met. The chart slipped from his hands. "Sarah?" She turned away, but there was nowhere to hide. The orderly was already helping her onto the bed. A nurse was taking her vitals, and another contraction was building like a wave about to crash. James appeared in the doorway. "I need to speak with my patient," he said to the nurses, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Your patient needs an epidural and about 10 minutes without you," Sarah managed between gritted teeth. To her surprise, he nodded. "You're right. Dr. Chen will handle your admission. I'll step away." "Wait!" The word escaped before Sarah could stop it. Another contraction was coming, harder and faster than the last. She was 6 weeks early, alone and terrified. "Is my baby going to be okay?" The professional mask slipped, and for just a moment, she saw something roar in his eyes. "I'm going to make sure of it. I promise." The next 2 hours were a blur of pain, pressure, and the steady presence of Dr. Amanda Chen. No relation, she joked weakly, coaching Sarah through each contraction. But Sarah knew James was just outside. She could hear his voice through the door, ordering tests, consulting with the NICU team, orchestrating her care like a conductor before a symphony. When Dr. Chen finally said, "It's time to push," James appeared beside her, gloved and gowned, his eyes meeting hers over his surgical mask. "I thought, Amanda's excellent, but your baby is breech. I'm the best surgeon in this hospital. It wasn't arrogance, just fact. Let me do this, Sarah, please." She was too exhausted to argue, too scared to refuse. She nodded. "Okay," James said, his voice shifting into something gentler. "Sarah, listen to me. I need you to trust me one more time. The irony of those words wasn't lost on either of them. What happened next was a testament to James's skill. Sarah felt the pressure, the pull, the strange sensation of her body, being opened and then relieved of its precious cargo. But what she saw in James's eyes was what undid her completely. "It's a girl," he whispered, and his voice cracked. "Sarah, she's perfect." But the baby didn't cry. The room exploded into controlled chaos. Nurses moving, equipment beeping, James barking orders. Sarah tried to sit up, panic clawing at her chest. "What's wrong? Why isn't she crying?" James was already working, his hands steady as he cleared the baby's airway with practiced precision. "Come on, sweetheart," he murmured. "Breathe for me, come on." Seconds stretched into eternity. Then a cough, a sputter, and finally the most beautiful sound Sarah had ever heard. Her daughter's indignant wail. "There she is," James said, and Sarah saw his shoulders sag with relief. He wrapped the baby carefully, then did something that shocked everyone in the room. He brought her directly to Sarah, laying her on Sarah's chest before the nurses could even clean her off. "Meet your mama," he whispered. Sarah's tears came in great, shuddering sobs as she looked down at her daughter's tiny, perfect face. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a rosebud mouth, and eyes that would probably be brown like hers. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "I'm your mom. I've got you." But over her daughter's downy head, she saw James step back, saw him turn away quickly. When he turned back, his eyes were red. 3 hours later, Sarah woke in a private recovery room. The baby, she needed to pick a name, she thought groggily, was sleeping in a clear bassinet beside her bed. Through the window, dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. James sat in the chair by her bed. "You should be sleeping," he said quietly when he saw her eyes open. "What are you doing here? Your shift must be over. It ended 2 hours ago." He didn't move. "Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen." She waited, too tired to be defensive. 3 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I chose my career over you, over our child, because I was scared and selfish and convinced that I knew what I wanted." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I threw myself into work. I became chief of obstetrics. I delivered hundreds of babies. And every single one, Sarah, I wondered if it was mine." "James!" "Let me finish, please." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "Tonight, when you came through those doors, it felt like the universe was giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. And when I held your daughter, when I helped her take her first breath." He stopped, his voice breaking. "Sarah, I fell in love. Completely and irrevocably in love with a person I'd just met." Sarah's heart hammered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be in her life. I'm saying I know I have no right to ask, no claim to make. But I'm asking anyway." He met her eyes. "Not as a father. I understand I gave up that right. But as something. Uncle James, family friend. The guy who shows up for birthdays and dance recitals and makes terrible dad jokes even though he isn't her dad." "Why?" Sarah whispered. "Why now? Because I've spent 3 years delivering other people's miracles and going home to an empty apartment, wondering what mine would have looked like. And tonight I found out." He glanced at the sleeping baby. "She looks like you, by the way. Same stubborn chin." Despite everything, Sarah smiled. "She's going to need that." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, "Her name is Emma, Emma Rose." "It's perfect." "James, I'm not ready to—" "I know, I'm not asking for us. That ship sailed, and I'm the one who pushed it away from shore." His smile was sad. "I'm just asking for a chance to know her, to be someone she can count on, to help if you'll let me." Sarah looked at Emma, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the complicated world she'd just entered. She thought about the insurance card in her wallet, the bills already piling up, the fear she'd been carrying for months about doing this alone. But more than that, she thought about the look in James's eyes when he'd held Emma for the first time. That wasn't obligation or guilt. That was love, pure and simple. "Start small," she said finally. "Visit us before we're discharged. Bring coffee. good coffee, not hospital sludge. We'll talk. I can do that. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Sarah, you're going to be an amazing mother. You already are. After he left, Sarah lay in the quiet room, listening to her daughter's soft breathing. Outside, the city was waking up, millions of people starting their days, making choices, living their lives. She'd made her choice 3 years ago, and it had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. But looking at Emma now, she knew it had also been the right thing. And maybe, just maybe, the universe was giving them all a second chance at something beautiful. Epilogue. 2 years later, Sarah watched from a park bench as James pushed Emma on the swings, her delighted shrieks filling the autumn air. True to his word, he'd started small, coffee visits at the hospital, then brief stops at her apartment, then weekend trips to the zoo. He'd also done something unbelievable, something he'd revealed in a quiet moment 6 months after Emma's birth. He'd paid off Sarah's medical bills from the delivery, all of them. When she'd protested, he'd simply said, "I wasn't there when she was conceived. I wasn't there during your pregnancy. Let me be there for this." He'd also set up a college fund and helped her move to a better apartment, and showed up, without fail, every Tuesday evening for dinner, which he usually cooked, because his culinary skills had improved dramatically. They weren't together. Sarah had dated others, and she suspected James had too, though he never mentioned it around Emma. But they were family, in the most unexpected and precious way. "Mama, look!" Emma called out, her dark curls bouncing. "Higher!" "Not too high, James," Sarah called back, and he grinned at her. That same smile she'd fallen in love with once upon a time. Maybe they'd find their way back to each other someday. Maybe they wouldn't. But watching her daughter laugh in the arms of a man who'd chosen to show up, day after day, year after year, not because he had to, but because he wanted to, Sarah realized something profound. Love wasn't just about the beginning. It was about the second chances, the showing up, the choice to stay. And sometimes, the most unbelievable thing a person could do was simply be present for the miracles they'd once walked away from. The end. Time estimate, approximately 11 minutes of spoken narration.